Welcome to the next installment of LIA100. My guest today is Julee Everett. Julee is an awesome product innovation and portfolio management coach based in Florida, and she works throughout the East Coast. Welcome, Julee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So we're just talking earlier about your journey because you didn't came fully shaped to the Julee Everett expert that you are today, right? So how did this happen?
Well, I was really fortunate because when I first started moving into my Agile journey, I had a coach. And he's still my coach today. And so he's been in my life for about a year. And I think that was about 10 years, about a decade. I think that was really important for me because as I was learning and growing, I had somebody there who could really help me break through some of my own biases and understand myself a little bit better. So he was there to guide me. And I was also really fortunate to be in the DC area where we had a lot of people exploring, and the big names were coming through, and they were very, very generous. So this has been about 12 years now.
That's awesome. So we talked about DC connection earlier. Doing Agile in government space comes with some unique challenges. Can you talk a bit more about that?
I always think that Agile really does work well in regulatory spaces. It's interesting because some people think of it as constraints, but I think of it as an opportunity to get something started. You might have an audit or a regulatory thing happening, but then you have a chance to change it. And so since we welcome change, I think it works really well in that space. Some people really struggle. I think a lot of it really comes from the way that maybe the projects are set up or the SOWs because of the contracts and stuff. But it's been pretty exciting to see even that change over the years where we're starting to see more Agile contracts.
I want to dig into that before we get into that. So tell me more about you. Were you a BA? Were you working in IT? Were you a developer? How did you enter this whole realm of Agile work?
It's so interesting because I actually was working for the government as a federal officer, carried a gun.
Wow.
Yes, farm girl from Idaho. And when I started building a family, I couldn't carry a gun anymore. And my boss knew that I could draw a little bit. And at the time, the agency I was working with, they had me exploring how to use a Mac and got a little bit into some design and print media. And I really had a talent for that. I left the government and I owned my own visual communications business. And it was really all about print media and ads and building out contracts and those really huge RFPs, building graphics. And I went on a portfolio call, and this guy was talking about this government expo, and he was talking about the internet. And he said it was going to change the world. This is really aging me. And I thought, well, if it's going to change the world, I got to figure this stuff out. So I went home and I plugged in my AOL CD. I taught myself HTML. And I learned how to build websites. And I went around my hometown and I started asking everybody if I could build them a website. And I built my hometown's Harley-Davidson website for $750 when every single motorcycle was an individual image. And so I was just begging people to let me build their websites. And that really was really at the edge of, some things really happening in the Agile space. And so I started, eventually ended up working for a company who was really experimenting with what we would call Agile today. Just this rapid development, lots of customer feedback, and really fostering that environment. So when Agile started becoming a thing and Scrum started becoming a thing, I really still had that entrepreneurial spirit. I was already working in that space. And so I really moved from visual communication and designing print media and then into websites, and then started moving into the project management world, but always in a digital space. And that lent itself very smoothly into the Agile leadership and Scrum and Kanban and some of the things that we know today. Long way from being a federal officer.
I was going to say, from being raised in a farm town in Idaho to federal law enforcement to digital media back into Agile coaching. So how did you end up as a coach in the Agile space?
So I had this coach and I really admired what he was doing, and he really changed my life. I mean, I really moved from what I call command and hope to really understanding what servant leadership was. I don't think I could have done it by myself. I mean, I had people on my team and I was, not really embracing that spirit. I had a couple people quit, and he was willing to give me the hard truths. And I really admired that. And so I was really interested in this ability to impact others, impact the way that they looked at their world, that they looked at their culture and their company and in their life and in their products. And so he really was a mentor to me, but I talked myself out of it like we do. I had a pretty severe imposter syndrome, can't do it. But I went through a period of time where I said, you know what, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to, as they say, fake it till you become it. And I just started reading everything I could get my hands on. It was very, very early. I was, gifted some Excel burn downs and things like that. This was a long time before there were agile tools. And I was working in this company that was willing to experiment. And I really kind of moved into that space, one step at a time. I would try something, I would explore things, I'd learn something, I'd try it. I'd read something else, I'd try it. I'd pick up something from somebody else, I'd try it. And, at the same time, Agile was starting to become a community. I think the Agile, the Chicago conference, I think it was 2008, 2009, was a huge impact for me to really understand the depth and breadth of how far careers could go, that sort of the landscape of Agile and what we could do with it. Spent a lot of time like with Mike Cohn in those workshops and some of the big leaders really understanding personas and just user stories and some of this stuff that really brought us back to solving the problem for the customer. And that's really what I love.
I'm seeing another pattern as you're describing it. You're taking what other people would see as constraints and turning them into assets that work for you. So in other words, you took back when Agile didn't have the cold expert library thing, you turned that into advantage because you were able to try and learn. And as soon as the expertise was there, you're able to tap into that and leverage other people's knowledge.
I feel like everything I've learned has come from other people, and hopefully I pass it on to the people around me. I feel like people were really generous in that space, and generous not just in leading the way, but generous in experimenting and trying something out. I think we've gotten a little bit away from that spirit, and we started focusing a lot on frameworks and labels and rules. And I keep telling people, Agile it's entrepreneurial, it's fun, it's logical. If it's not logical, hit the red button on the wall. Let's borrow from lean manufacturing and stop. And so, if it feels uncomfortable, it feels unfamiliar, I get it. But if it feels illogical, we need to stop.
No, because Agile is pretty much common sense. It's do what works. If it's working, do more of it. If it's not working, stop it. It's not that hard.
Seems simple. It should be simple, right?
It should be part. Can we talk a little bit more about how you specialized in product and portfolio? Because those are two pretty challenging and open-ended areas to specialize in.
Yeah, so I specialize in lean portfolio. So I really believe in building entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship with the people that you have. And I've seen a lot of times when people go and fire their PMO. I worked in the PMO. I worked in with governance all my career. At some point, there's some element of governance with big business, right? And I think that there is a lot to be said about having alignment with corporate objectives, being able to show measurable results, removing impediments at a manager or leadership level so that the teams can be left alone to do what they do best. And so lean portfolio management really just borrows from lean, empowers the people doing the work, makes sense out of the madness by just focusing on throughput. And it's pretty simple when you get down to it, right? Like, what's our time to market and what's our time to value and what's our time to learn? So if I can just put a little bit of structure in place, I can get autonomy at the team level, but alignment at the corporate level. So that's always one side of what I do. And in there, I love product discovery. I just really love taking an idea, breaking it down into, a backlog, building out hypotheses, testing out assumptions, I got into design thinking and experiments and all of that. And that really kind of just feeds my creative side. So for me, they go hand in hand.
That's awesome. Would you have predicted this career path for yourself 20, 25 years ago?
You know what? I'm a yes girl. If somebody asks me to do something, I just say yes. You know, I am passionately curious. I will just say yes and go forth and figure it out. And so there's no way I could have predicted where I am or what I do. And I'm excited to see what happens in the next 10 years because who knows?
That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit more into this yes spirit because that is something that women often struggle with. So for you, was that an innate ability or was that one that you really had to cultivate?
I not only had to cultivate it, I think my position was overrun. I was a single provider and I had to take care of my family and nobody was going to do that for me. And I had some people in my life who were honest with me about like their salaries and what they were making, some men, and they helped me, right? They helped me speak business. They helped me talk about the worth of what I was doing, which is different from my worth, right? And so what I was doing was as valuable as what somebody else was doing. And so they taught me what worked for them. And particularly this couple of guys come to mind, they had a military background, they had, a great consulting background, and they were very generous, again, helping me change that script for myself. And part of it was necessity because I had to provide for my children. I had to live in the cheapest place I could get to work, and I had to work in the place I could make the most money. And I learned I had to be my own entrepreneur. I had to know the value of what I was doing. I had to build out my own personal roadmap. I had to stay ahead of competition. So I had to bring in everything I use with my clients. I had to bring into my life.
I honestly love that you're able to turn yet another constraint into an asset because it sounds like it helps you take all of these things, tools and techniques used for your clients and apply them to yourself, which honestly makes you a better consultant and coach because you've seen both sides of the equation. Does that sound about right?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Much more eloquently.
Okay, awesome. Now, listening to your journey, the patterns are pretty striking. You pretty obviously look at, okay, here's the constraints, fine. How can I make it an asset? And you've done it very consistently.
Thanks for recognizing that. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. This is my favorite part about these journeys because this is amazing. So I really want to talk a little bit more about something you referenced earlier, the community part, the Agile community. What has been the value of community engagement for you? Why do you still keep doing it even though you're now the expert?
Oh, I will tell you, the other night, a woman presented at our local meetup. I had a conversation with her about a year ago. She went and did her homework. She investigated some stuff. She tried something new. She did it at her company. She had to bring people in to do this story mapping exercise at her company. She just went and did it. And then I asked her to come and present back in the community, and she did a fantastic job. She was terrified, and she did it anyway. She was polished. She was funny. She had a story to tell, and it was inspiring. And it gives me chills thinking about it because that's exactly what we want. We want the growth mindset in practice. We want to build each other up. We want to see it passed on. And she's not an expert. She's not a professional speaker. And she just said yes. And she put her heart into it. And it was super inspiring. She did a fantastic job. I really felt like that's what we do. We are able to affect other people one person at a time. It's what happened with me. That's why I stay engaged with it. And, ultimately on the meta, it changes the way that we can build a different culture, right? We can change the culture, but I think it happens heart to heart.
It always has to. I think one of the best hallmarks of the Agile community is, I think, generosity of spirit.
Oh, so true. Yes.
And it sounds like you've been playing a part of that. And I love that you've stayed engaged even after you learned what you needed to learn, and now you're investing back in other people.
Oh, I learn from every person I talk to. Every conversation, they're giving me something that I can take back and do more with. It's great. It's a great journey. I love that phrase. What did you say? Generosity of spirit. I love that. That's a great impression. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. So what would be your advice to other people coming into the Agile community? Because I think we're now at a scale where when I first came in 10, 12 years ago, it was much smaller. People knew each other. Now this is a pretty big thing we're part of. So what would be your advice for people? How do they start finding their tribe in our community?
You know, people will come to me all the time and say, well, how do I get this position? Or how do I get that job? Or how do I do this? And I say, begin anywhere, right? Start anywhere. If you want to try to be a servant leader, do it in the team that you're in. If you want to practice some design thinking, try a new exercise with the next requirement session that you have. Start anywhere and become this change that you want. I can't tell you how many companies I've been in. They're like, oh, there's that Agile girl, right? Like, there she is. I know what she'd say. And it's like, I want to drink the Kool-Aid, right? And so read everything you can get your hands on. Try, don't take ourselves too seriously, like be okay because it's learning. And I would say be impeccable in your word. Don't say you will do something if you can't do it. Don't say maybe when you want to say no, right? You're smiling, right? And so be impeccable in your word. Don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, read everything, learn from others. So there's a lot to it, but I think it really just is, the product mindset, the growth mindset at play.
Can we talk a little bit about my reaction to say no? What do you mean maybe? Because I'm definitely guilty of that. How do we help each other be more honest in our accountability? Because thinking for myself, I'm definitely conditioned to want to say yes. To even when I know it should be a no, I want to say yes. So how do you recommend handling something like that?
I love that you use the word accountability. So I will often have an accountability partner, and I will put my growth goal out there and we hold each other accountable. Sometimes it's, here's my holistic experience that I want for my life, right? My husband and I make affirmations for ourselves. We build a holistic vision for what we want our life to be like. And I'm held accountable by the women I have in my life. And I ask them to call me on my behavior, to watch for my trends, and I do the same for them. And so when I start overdoing it, when I'm starting to, not value my worth, when they're starting to hear that kind of language come up, when they're starting to see the imposter syndrome, they're really good about, yes, support, but it's really also about accountability. It's people who are willing to call me on my behaviors so that I can go be introspective, learn what I'm doing, and change what's not working. So I can't do it by myself. I have a fantastic couple of women who hold me accountable in that way.
That's incredible. It sounds like you've taken the coaching lessons to heart and almost built your own coaching circle.
Yes, I've been really fortunate. And it's not all women. There's also men who are really candid with me, who give me, coach me if I'm going into an interview or a negotiation. There's some people close in my life who as you said, that generosity spirit, who I'm willing to take the feedback and they're willing to give it, right? So I think it's been a conversation that's built up over many occasions, because I don't know that we trust each other implicitly off the bat. But it's not just the support. It's not just the go get 'em girl. It's you could say it this way. Have you thought about that? And it really is being willing to hold each other accountable.
So be open to building relationships, recognizing that the relationships will take time to build trust, but within that, give good feedback and ask for good feedback.
Yes, and it's okay to be vulnerable, right? We have to go first and be vulnerable and, talk about those things that we're not super proud of. And in the end, they're just mistakes. They're not they're not wounding us at our core. They're just mistakes. And we just pick ourselves up and we move on.
failure is not fatal.
Exactly. Oh, that's good. I'm writing that one down.
I'm saying this as somebody who's also an entrepreneur. So can we talk a little bit about your journey as a business owner? Because that can be extraordinarily challenging beyond just the professional skills that we've cultivated.
Yeah, so I had a visual communications company. Ultimately, I have a really hard time with all the responsibility of being responsible for other people's paychecks. And so, I am an individual practitioner as well. I still have, my training license and work, but I really love to be part of a work community. I've learned it doesn't have to be me being the entrepreneurial leader, as long as I'm working in a culture that has that value, that feels kind of scrappy and brings that element of lean startup to the table, because I think that's what keeps us hungry and willing to take some risks. So yes, I've done it a couple of times in a couple of different domains. Had some successes, had some failures. But I think it makes me a better product coach, having to be on the other side of the balance sheet.
It makes a big difference when you are the person who's the business person, and then you come back and be the coach. You're like, okay, this is a whole new side of this world.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that you have that dual perspective. And you mentioned earlier family and children. What would be your advice? Let's just say if your kids wanted to come into the Agile space, or just generally apply the Agile values to their journeys and their careers.
So my kids are surprised I get paid for what I do. Every time I try to explain it, they're like, why do people even pay you? Why doesn't everybody think this way? Like, well, they might be a little bit unique because of the household that we fostered, but they don't get it. They don't get that I get paid to do this, and that other people don't think about experimenting and being organic thinkers and bringing stuff to the table. So what we say is, just have some fun with it, and you can do anything you're willing to do as long as you're willing to pay the consequences. So that's where we kind of come together on that. Yeah, they don't understand what we do at all. They're like, this is just a normal way of doing business. So they would not hire me.
Which is probably the best endorsement, because as coaches, you're supposed to work yourself out of a job, right? Yes. So you've done that with your kids. I love that your kids have internalized growth mindset as the normal. And I would love to see what they're going to be like in the workplace. What would be your advice for all the other young people who don't have Julie as their mom and who haven't internalized all of this stuff?
I think that I think having the ability to just, maybe it's the curiosity. I don't know what it is. And I know not everybody gets it, but for me, just being that curious cat. I'm a curious cat. I want to know everything. I don't have to retain everything, but I like to explore. And Agile gives you this very broad threshold. It's really amazing how you can come in one side of the threshold and move into all these different areas, of leadership, of user experience, of agility, of some Agile project management, some team building, some coaching, some product management, lean UX. Like, there's so much really when you get down to it. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If I had to boil it down to one thing, ask the questions. And that's probably a great starting point. Just be curious, and it will lead you to a passion.
And I think that sounds like a really good way to wrap up this LIA100 interview. Julie, I wish we had more time, but I love that you're a curious cat, and hopefully that is something that will resonate with our viewers. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks much.